For nearly 1,000 chapters, the story of One Piece has followed Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates on their voyage in pursuit of Gol D. Roger's legendary treasure. At the outset of the adventure, very little was known about the former Pirate King. Details about his voyage have gradually been revealed, though many mysteries yet remain. Information about Roger has often been delivered out of chronological order through flashbacks and exposition. As the only pirate to ever reach the final island of the Grand Line and learn the true history of the One Piece world, a bearer of the will of D, and the one responsible for initiating the Great Pirate Era, setting in motion the events of the story, Roger is a tremendously important character. By chronicling his adventure, we may gain some insight into the deeper mysteries of the One Piece world. At the very least, perhaps we can learn which questions to ask. To begin, Roger was executed 24 years before the current point in the story of One Piece. In constructing this timeline, I'll be using the current year in the story as a point of reference. 77 years ago, at the age of 0, Gol D. Roger is born in 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚝. We know from the data books Roger was 53 at the time of his execution, so he would be 77 if he were still alive. 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒 is said to be the place where he was both born and died, the prologue and epilogue of Roger's adventure. Approximately 50 years ago, around the age of 20, Roger met Rayleigh, and together they embarked on an adventure to turn the world upside down. Rayleigh was not only Roger's first mate, but also his longest friend. We see this scene from Rayleigh's perspective in chapter 603. Brook's voyage with Calico Yorkie took place 50 years before the current point in the story. He says there may have been a rookie pirate named Roger at the time, so we can say the scene took place at least 50 years ago. 39 years ago, at the age of 38, Roger and his quest to reach the end of the Grand Line arrived at Lodestar Island, the final island which can be reached by following the log post, where all paths converge. Roger believed this place to be the final island until after arriving he somehow learned of the existence of the poneglyphs and the hidden final island, which can only be reached by combining the information contained on the 4 road poneglyphs. Following this revelation, Roger began his journey anew. 38 years ago, when Roger was 39 years old, the God Valley incident occurred. On the lost island of God Valley, Roger united with Marine Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp to take down the Rock's pirates. This infamous group, containing many powerful pirates including Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido, was united by Rock's 𝙲𝚘𝚎𝚑 on Pirate Island 40 years before the current story of One Piece began, and for a time they were the most powerful pirate crew in the world. 𝙲𝚑𝚑 targeted a group of celestial dragons on God Valley in service to his ambition of becoming world king. Roger and Garp together defended the celestial dragons and broke apart the Rock's pirates. 28 years ago, at the age of 49, Roger was afflicted with an incurable fatal illness, and he immediately began his final voyage through the Grand Line. The Roger pirates recruited the lighthouse caretaker Crocus as the ship's doctor to lessen Roger's pain and prolong his life. 27 years ago, at the age of 50, the Roger pirates clashed with the Golden Lion pirates led by Shiki in the Edward Sea. The Roger pirates emerged victorious, and Shiki's fleet was broken apart. 26 years ago, at the age of 51, the Roger pirates battled the Whitebeard pirates on a certain island in the Grand Line. Roger told Whitebeard about the road poneglyphs and the existence of the final island. Kozuki Oden decided to join Roger on the final leg of his voyage in order to decipher the poneglyphs, which were created by the Kozuki clan of Wano, Oden's ancestor. In chapters 966 and 967, we see a montage of the Roger pirates' voyage through the Grand Line in pursuit of the road poneglyphs, taking place over the following year. The Roger pirates voyage to Skypiea, where Oden helps inscribe the message on the golden bell Robin later reads after the battle with Eneru. They visit Water 7 and meet with Tom, who at some earlier point had constructed their ship, the Oro Jackson. This scene takes place shortly before Frankie joins Tom's workers as an apprentice shipwright. Ino Arushi and Nekomamushi tell Roger about the road poneglyph on Zou, to which he responds he already has an engraving of the one in Linlin's possession. From this, we know the road poneglyph on Whole Cake Island was the first discovered by the Roger pirates. Roger was already in possession of this engraving when he met with Whitebeard and Oden. After departing from Water 7, the Roger pirates voyaged to many islands. Interestingly, we see them sail past Tequila Wolf, a massive bridge which has been under construction in the East Blue for 700 years. It would seem this destination was out of their way. So what compelled this visit? The Roger pirates next discover the road poneglyph located on Fishman Island, where Oden also reads the message left behind by Joy Boy. Roger and Oden hear the voice of the Sea Kings, and Roger receives a prophecy from a young Charlie. The third road poneglyph is found on Wano. Toki falls ill and disembarks, returning to Kuri with Momonosuke and Hiyori. Ino Arushi and Nekomamushi also remain on Wano, rejoining Oden's retainers, while Oden continues on with Roger. The last of the 4 road poneglyphs is found on Zou, guarded by the Mink tribe. A young Pedro begs Roger for the opportunity to sail away with him. Roger declines his request, but tells Pedro every person gets their time to shine. Pedro later goes on to form his own crew, the Nox Pirates, and attempts to gather the poneglyphs. Pedro's time to shine comes many years later during the Whole Cake Island story arc, when he gives his life to rescue the Straw Hat Pirates and ensure they live on to bring about the New Dawn. Pedro also imparts Roger's message to Carrot, a strong contender to join Luffy's crew. With all 4 road poneglyphs, the Roger Pirates chart a course for the final island. Buggy falls ill and is forced to remain behind. Shanks chooses to stay with Buggy and thus is also not present for the discovery of One Piece. 25 years ago, at the age of 52, the Roger Pirates successfully reached the final island, where they learned the true history of the world. Roger decided to name the island Laugh-Tale in reference to Joy Boy's adventures, seemingly recorded on the Rio Poneglyph. We here learn that the Roger Pirates were the first people in 800 years to reach Laugh-Tale, and that the treasure One Piece was not left behind by Roger. We learn that One Piece was instead discovered on the final island, indicating it was likely left behind by the enigmatic figure Joy Boy, many years before the story began at the end of the Void Century. The world's papers declared Roger the king of the pirates and named his treasure One Piece. In light of the revelation of the world's true history, Roger chose not to act. On Fishman Island, shortly before arriving on Laugh-Tale, while meeting with King Neptune, Roger heard Charlie's prophecy, 10 years to be born, 15 years to grow older, likely in reference to Shirahoshi, whose ability to control the Sea Kings will be paramount to reshaping the One Piece world. When the Straw Hats met Rayleigh for the first time on 𝚬𝚙𝚢, he told Robin that the Roger Pirates were perhaps too early, and we now understand the meaning of his words. Roger chose not to confront the world and shoulder the burden of history. As a dying man, he didn't have the time to wait for the appointed day, and thus chose to leave the task for his successor. Roger chose to disband his crew 1 year prior to his execution. Shortly beforehand, he shared a private conversation with Shanks, which brought the young apprentice to tears. We see Roger disembark his ship, the Oro Jackson, and leave his crew behind in chapter 968, shortly before Odin returned to Wano. 25 years ago, at the age of 52, a short time later, Roger met with Whitebeard one final time on an island covered in cherry blossom. Could this be the same location referenced by Dr. Hiroluck in Chopper's flashback, and thus represent a last-ditch effort to heal his fatal illness? Roger informed Rayleigh of his intent to meet Whitebeard shortly before parting ways. During this meeting, Whitebeard declined Roger's offer to learn the location of One Piece, but learned about the will of D. Many years later, at the Battle of Marineford, during his final moments, Whitebeard echoed Roger's words, reinvigorating the Great Pirate era by affirming the existence of One Piece. It seems Roger may have told Whitebeard a great deal about the world and its history, as Whitebeard understands well the important role intended for those who carry the name D, and the degree to which discovery of the treasure will upturn the One Piece world. 24 and a half years ago, at the age of 52 and a half, Roger met Port-Ghasti Rouge. Shortly before parting ways, Roger told Rayleigh he believed his successor would discover One Piece at the appointed time, and that this person would likely be his yet-to-be-born biological heir. Shortly after, Roger turned himself over to the world government, after having fathered a child with Rouge. He remained imprisoned for 6 months before his execution. During the Marineford arc, we see a flashback scene where Roger asks Garp to look after his child. He says a child should not pay the price for the sins of their parent. Rouge was pregnant at the time of Roger's execution, and through some supernatural force attributed to strength of will, slowed Ace's development and carried him for a year after Roger's execution, giving her life in the process, to hide Roger's child from the world government. 24 years ago, at the age of 53. Wealth, fame, power. Gold Roger, king of the pirates, had achieved it all. My fortune is yours if you can find it, but you'll have to search the whole world. I left everything I own in that place. Roger is executed in Logtown, but uses his final words to incite a great era of piracy, setting in motion the events of the story of One Piece. In the first 22 years which followed Roger's execution, Whitebeard and his crew reigned as the most powerful on the seas, while pirates from around the world set out in search of Roger's treasure. Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, and Shanks came to rule the second half of the Grand Line as the Four Emperors. Shanks is the most recent member of the Emperor class, having achieved such distinction in the eyes of the world only 6 years before the current point in the story, or 4 years before Luffy departed from Windmill Village. 2 years before the present point in time, Luffy set out on his fateful voyage, recruited a crew, and experienced many adventures. The Straw Hat Pirates were disbanded on 𝚬𝚙𝚢 shortly before the Paramount War, where Luffy failed to rescue his brother Ace, the son of Gol D Roger, from execution. Whitebeard's death at Marineford marked another significant turning point in the world of piracy. The resultant power vacuum has created a turbulent era in which the worst generation have achieved significant notoriety. Over the past 2 years, Blackbeard has taken over Whitebeard's position as one of the Four Emperors. After toppling Doflamingo's organization, Luffy and Law irreversibly broke the power structure in the New World. Morgans declared Luffy the 5th Emperor after his foray into Big Mom's territory, and he's now engaged in a battle against Kaido and Big Mom on Wano. The war for supremacy in the New World is only going to escalate until someone soon takes up the Pirate King's mantle. Oden's flashback revealed many details about Roger's voyage, but seems to have asked as many questions as it answered. We know most of the important details of Roger's second voyage through the Grand Line, during which he discovered the 4 road poneglyphs and with the help of Kozuki Oden, the final island and the treasure One Piece. Oden, Crocus, Rayleigh, Gaban, Shanks, Buggy, Toki, Inuarashi, and Nekomamushi are among those who sailed with Roger during this 3-year time period. Yet Roger's first voyage remains almost entirely shrouded in mystery. We know Rayleigh was the first companion to join Roger, but not what spurred them out to sea. At the time Roger met Rayleigh, he was wearing the straw hat for which Luffy is now famous. This appearance of young Roger sans iconic handlebar mustache is the only time we have seen Roger during this phase in his life. The closest we have seen is the silhouetted appearance of Roger and Garp engaged in combat with the Rock's pirates, pictured in chapter 957, which takes place over a decade later in the timeline. Roger at some later point imparted his hat to Shanks, who in turn entrusted it to Luffy for safekeeping. There exists in Imu's vault in Marijois a large straw hat identical in design. Where did Roger receive his hat? Was he aware of its seeming importance when he entrusted it to Shanks? Roger promises Rayleigh they will turn the world upside down, phrase echoed by Whitebeard in reference to the impact of someone soon discovering One Piece. As one who carries the name D and hears the voice of all things, was Roger to a degree already aware of the world's history when he first set sail? Appearing in the extra notes for the first volume of the series, there is a single panel with a text box describing Roger as history's only king of the pirates. Interestingly, no one was ever declared Pirate King before Gol D Roger successfully completed his voyage to Laugh Tale. Why was Roger seeking the end of the Grand Line? What spurred on pirates and adventurers in pursuit of this elusive destination prior to Roger's dying words? Roger was already searching for the end of the Grand Line during his first voyage, which ended on Lodestar Island 39 years ago. Brooks' crew, captained by Calico Yorkie, also set out for the end of the Grand Line 50 years prior to the start of One Piece, at which point in time Roger was only a rookie pirate. We have seen very little of the One Piece world in the era before Roger's second voyage through the Grand Line. To date, there are only 8 prominent scenes or flashbacks set in the pre-Roger era. Boodle and the other settlers building Orangetown after their previous home was overrun by pirates 40 years ago. Nolan's Skypiea flashback. The Whole Cake Island flashback to Big Mom's childhood. Brooks' flashback to his adventures with the Rumba Pirates. The flashback scene where Dory and Bragi begin their century-long battle on Little Garden. The start of Oden's flashback on Wano before meeting Whitebeard. The single panel in chapter 603 where Rayleigh reminisces about meeting Roger. And the brief glimpses of the God Valley incident in chapter 957 which accompanies Sengoku's rendition of the tale. The era of piracy which predates Roger's execution is still a mystery. Though no one sought out the famous treasure One Piece, there was something driving people toward the end of the Grand Line in pursuit of the final island. We know that Roger being named Pirate King by the world was directly the result of his having achieved this goal. We do not yet know how the world became aware of this achievement. The world's papers announce Roger has reached the final island, his title, and the name of the treasure One Piece, but we don't know how they became aware of this information. We do now know why the world understood Roger's dying words to mean One Piece would be found on the final island. That place couldn't really mean any other location. What remains unclear is why Roger, Yorkie, and many others were already seeking the final island. Was there some legend regarding the end of the Grand Line, which predates the story of the Pirate King and his legendary treasure? We first learn that Laugh Tale and the island which waits the Straw Hats at the end of the Log Post Path are not one and the same from Inuarashi in chapter 820. It was on Lodestar Island that Roger learned about the Poneglyphs, the society from which they emerged, and Laugh Tale, the secret final island. Reaching Lodestar must be quite the daunting task. Whitebeard remarked that Roger was the first to do so when they battled during Oden's flashback. The existence of the road poneglyphs is not widely known, which explains why no one has reached Laugh Tale in 800 years. But what makes following the log path to Lodestar such a Herculean task, and what arcane repository of knowledge informs those who survive the voyage? Roger only returned to the Grand Line after contracting a fatal illness, but what prompted his decade-long departure? I have posted another theory video about Shanks and the Mystery of God Valley, in which I discuss one possible reason for Roger's hiatus. The God Valley incident took place 1 year after Roger's discovery of Lodestar, indicating his hiatus did not begin immediately following the conclusion of his first voyage. Roger returns to the Grand Line 10 years later with Shanks in tow, now an apprentice in possession of Roger's hat. Momonosuke and Hiyori were not the first babies aboard Roger's ship, as revealed in chapter 966. Could Shanks have been rescued as a child from God Valley, thus prompting the delay in Roger's pursuit of Laugh-Tale? Throughout Roger's second voyage, his ship houses a massive spotted egg, which, at the time of his departure, had not yet hatched. Where did Roger find it? Has it hatched yet? What will emerge when it does? Could whatever creature it contains be related to the prophesied dawn of the New World? Could it be the other monarch foretold in Charlie's prophecy, born in a distant sea? When did Roger meet Rouge? Were they already familiar at the time Roger declared his belief that an unborn child would someday inherit his will? Or did the two meet and strike up a fast romance in the 6 months between the disbanding of the Roger Pirates and Roger turning himself over to the world government? Dragon's introduction in chapter 100 is accompanied by a quote from Roger which reads, "These things cannot be stopped. An inherited strength of will, one's dreams, the ebb and flow of the ages. As long as people hunger for freedom, these things will exist." When and where were these words spoken to have made such a lasting impact on Luffy's father? During Roger's execution? The God Valley incident? I imagine we will someday learn the origin of this quote. Perhaps most significantly, why is the treasure called One Piece? In chapter 967, we see that Roger is responsible for naming the final island Laugh-Tale, but the world's newspapers are the first to use the name One Piece. If not Roger, who is responsible for naming the legendary treasure from which the title of the series is derived? Though we have learned a lot about Roger as the series has progressed, most recently through Oden's flashback, much of his life remains unexplored. His first voyage lasted more than a decade, and there is a 10-year hiatus between the God Valley incident and Roger's second voyage. These parts of Roger's life may yet be explored in the future, shedding light on the deepest mysteries in the One Piece world. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please leave a like. If you want to be notified when future videos go live, please consider subscribing and hit the bell icon. Most important, what questions do you have about the former Pirate King? Let me know what you think in the comments section down below.